Hello everyone, welcome to Hari'sAcademy. Today we are going to learn about the very important topic and very important service of AWS, which is EC2. EC2 is nothing but Elastic Compute Cloud. So this is also called as virtual machine when you see it in other cloud providers. There are different names, but this is just a virtual machine, right? So before creating a virtual machine, we'll have to understand two important things. Okay, so those important things are creating a security group and creating a key pair. So we'll learn about what are security groups, what are inbound and outbound rules for those security groups. Then we'll see what is key pair. There are two different key pairs, private and public. We are going to learn in more detail. So let's learn about creating a security group. So before creating a group, security group, we wanted to understand why is it important to have a security group for an EC2 machine, right? So suppose you have created an instance on EC2. When I say instance, creating a server on EC2. When you are doing that, anyone can access to that particular server? The answer is no, right? So only authenticated people should be able to access it. So how to protect that? We can protect it by having a firewall. Like in our system also, whenever we have an antivirus, we have a firewall which helps us to get prevented by all the virus attacks. The similar way, we'll have to create a security group which acts as a firewall before it reaches. Suppose I have someone from one laptop, he or she is trying to access a server which is in North Virginia or any other location. Suppose it has to go through the first step, which is security group. So once it allows, then only the request will go to the EC2 machine, and then it will come back to the response will come back to the particular user. So this is very important step when we are trying to create an EC2 machine. Like let's see what is inbound and what is outbound, right? So let's see with an example. So I have logged into my IAM user, which is admin user @ Hari AWS training. So now, as we discussed, we wanted to create a security group first before going into any other details of EC2. So I'll go to EC2 by searching the services here, and I'll go to EC2 console. Now I can see in the left hand side there are different options. We are going to learn each and everything in detail. For now, I am interested to create a security group, right? I'll go and click on network and security. In that network and security, I'll go to security groups. Now you can see there is a default security group already created, and this is free of cost. You can create 2500 security groups of your own. Okay, so this is free of cost, so you can create as many security groups as possible, right? Now what I'll do, I'll go and create a security group for my EC2 instance. Okay, I will name it as my first EC2, my first security group. Okay, and I can give some description to it, like what kind of access I'm going to give it to it. For now, I'm leaving it as blank. Okay, now here we have discussed about inbound and outbound rules. So what are these inbound and outbound rules? Suppose any user wants to directly talk to EC2, he cannot go directly. He has to go through the security group which acts as a firewall. So the request which goes from the user to the EC2 via security group is called inbound request. Okay, so whenever we want to do some inbound activity or outbound activity, we need to understand three important things. One is we need to know what is the port number and what is the protocol we are going to use. Third one, whether my IP address is having enough access to enter into that particular EC2, right? So these are the three things which are very important. So suppose if I want to access a website, what would be the port number? Any guesses? Yes, you would have seen already, port number would be 80, and protocol, what kind of protocol we use for accessing a web page? right? Whenever you're typing any URL, it starts with HTTP. HTTP itself says Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and that is the protocol which we use to connect to a web page, right? And if you are connecting to a secured web page, it will be HTTPS. S is for secured. So these are the two important things which we know, which is port number and protocol. Along with that, who should be able to access it. Now we'll create inbound rule, and we can see all these three options which has to be entered here. I'll click on add rule. You can see there are different options in the type, right? Now I'm going to select HTTP, that is the protocol which I'm going to type, and then I can see port range is already selected as 80. Now I'll have to mention the IP address which is going to access this particular web page. So if my laptop is having an address of 1.2.3.4, because IP address will have four way, sorry, I'll show you how it looks like. Okay, IP address will look like this. Okay, it might look like this also. You would have seen some IP addresses like 192.68.0.1. This is one of the IP address which we use it for our Wi-Fi routers. Similarly, the IP address will look like this. So we'll have to mention the IP address of the laptop which has to be accessed, for which the access is to be allowed, right? So I will select it as 0.0.0.0/0. This says like I am giving access to the IP address, all the IP address. So anyone with any IP address can view my web page. Because I am creating a web page, it should be accessed by everyone. That is the reason I am giving it as 0.0.0.0. This is the IPv4 address. Okay, this is IPv4 address, and then the remaining one which I gave here /0, this will say the IPv6 address. We will understand more about what is IPv4 and IPv6 address later. Okay, now I'll say add rule. Okay, I can add multiple inbound rules and multiple outbound rules as well. It's up to me, right? So if I want to access a Linux instance, what is the port number I have to have? So like we have discussed, to access a web page, right? To access a web page, we need to have a port number which is 80 to be enabled, and also the protocol which to be followed here is HTTP or HTTPS if it is a secured website, right? And we have to see whom I have to give access to, whom the access is to be given, right? This is nothing but our IP address of the laptop or desktop which we want to allow to access the EC2 instance, right? Similarly, for accessing a Linux machine, suppose I have created a Linux machine and I wanted to access a Linux machine. So what would be the port? What would be the protocol? Okay, any idea like what would be the protocol and port for Linux machine? Port number would be 22 and the protocol would be SSH, which is saying secure shell. SSH is nothing but secure shell. Similarly, to access a Windows machine, okay, to access a Windows machine, what port we need? You would have seen this in your Windows machine. To access a remote desktop, we have a connection called as protocol called as RDP, which says remote desktop protocol. Okay, and the port number would be 3389. So I'll also select one more which is SSH. I can type in and I can get the details here. You can see that port range is given as 22, which is what we have discussed just now. Port is 22 for protocol SSH, right? And I can give some IP address here also, right? For now I am not adding anything here. This is one of the example which I have shown. Okay, let me delete this one now. Okay, now outbound rules. So whatever incoming request we are getting it from the user to access an EC2 machine, that is called inbound request, and once the access is allowed by the security group, which acts as a firewall, whatever comes back from the EC2 machine is called as outbound. So outbound rules should be specified, right? But as this is a stateful service, okay, this is a stateful service, I'll have to write a description here, HTTP for web pages. Okay, so as this is a stateful service, when I say stateful, whatever goes in using inbound rules, the same without giving any outbound rule also, still you'll be able to get the response back, right? There are some stateless services also which will be like different for inbound as well as outbound, but for security groups, remember that inbound and outbound is not required to be given, right? Though if you are given inbound as HTTP, the same will be applicable for outbound as well. Okay, so for now I am not adding anything here, but automatically you can see there is some outbound rule already added to it. I'll go and create a security group now. So this is an easier way to create a security group. So we have understood what is a security group, why it is required, how it acts as a firewall between the user as well as the server, and what are inbound rules, what are outbound rules, what are the port numbers we have to use for each and every protocol, and which IP address we have to give access to. This is also very important step, because whenever we are giving access to any particular user or laptop or IP address, we have to ensure like this is not open to all. Suppose this is only for a website, so we have given it as all, but it could be for some other purpose. So this is very important step which has to be taken care by us, like whom we are giving access and for what purpose. So that should be very much prompt to that particular IP address only, limited to that IP address only. So that should be taken care. So this way I have created one security group. Next we have thought of learning what is key pair. So first step in EC2 we have created, which is security group. We have also given inbound and outbound rules. Now we are going to learn about key pair. So let us see it with an example here. Okay, let me change the size of it. I'll increase the font size so that it will be easier for you to look at. Okay, now I said like we have key pair. What is key pair? Key pair is like it will be useful to authenticate and enter into any EC2 instance. Okay, so whenever we are trying to log into our own Windows desktop machine, what we do, we enter a username, we enter a password, and then we will be able to enter inside that particular system, and we will be able to access the system for any other purpose, right? The similar way, whenever we are creating an instance, to access it, we need to have a key pair. Okay, so key pairs are of two different types. Why? So there are two different types of key pair. One is private key. Okay, one is private key and the other one is public key, right? So we will see what are the types of private keys we have. We have one file format called as PEM file, another file format called as PPK file. I am not sure about the PEM file, the acronym for this, but I know for PPK, which is Putty Private Key. Okay, so when it itself says Putty Private Key, to access a Linux machine from our Windows machine, you need to have a software called as Putty, right? So once you once you download and install Putty, you should be able to access your Linux machine easily using this private key. Okay, public keys can be generated from OpenSSH, created from OpenSSH. We are not going to look at more about public key because it is very easy to create a private key here. Okay, so let's move on. Now, as I said, we have created security groups till now. Now we are going to learn how to create a key pair. Key pair would also be here itself, right? Okay, let me just see. So it is in network and security. Below placement groups we have key pairs. Now I'll go to key pair and I will create a key. So while creating a key, there are two different options here, right? I can see the different file format here. One is PEM and one is PPK. PEM is for any other software other than Putty, and PPK is for Putty. Okay, it itself says Putty Private Key. So I can directly create a PPK file and use it in Putty, or I can create a PEM file. If that is the only format available, I can create a PEM file and then convert it to, so I can create a PEM file and then convert it to PPK file using an option called as Puttygen. Okay, these are the two softwares which are required for us to log into our EC2 instance. Okay, let us see that. So you need to install Putty and Puttygen. This is the URL. I am going to have it in the comment section also. So this is the URL which from where you can download Putty as well as Puttygen. So you can see there are different installer. One is 32-bit and one is 64-bit. You can install anything based on your configuration. Along with that, you can also install Puttygen. Okay, this will help us to convert a PEM file to PPK file. We will see how it works. Okay, now I have already downloaded that. You can get it downloaded from here. Okay, so now what I'll do, I'll create a PEM file. Okay, I can give any name to this key pair. I'll say my demo key pair. Okay, now when I click on create key pair, the key pair is generated and it will ask for saving this file, because this is the file, the PEM file which is generated now. When I clicked on create a key pair, this I will save it at my desktop. Okay, so we have got the PEM file here. Now what I have to do, I'll have to open Puttygen. So what are the steps to convert a PEM file to PPK file? First step is to open Puttygen. Second step would be load PEM file to Puttygen, and third step would be generate private key. So these are the three steps. Once you do this, you will have a PPK file generated which can be used as an authentication for Putty to connect to your Linux instance. Okay, so now I'll go to Puttygen. So it looks like this. The first step would be to load. When I have opened a Puttygen, now I'll load the PEM file. So the PEM file is presented at desktop. You can see by default it is asking for a Putty Private Key, but we don't have Putty Private Key file. So we'll go to all files. Now I'll click on my demo key pair which we have just created, and then I'll click on open. You can see it says successfully imported foreign key, and it says some message that private key has been saved, created. Now I can click on the third option which is generate private key or save private key. So I'll click on save private key. It is asking you to passphrase. So if you want to protect it, you can give a passphrase to it so that only you can access it. But for now it is not required. I'm just going to say no. Sorry, I am going to say yes to it. And now you can see I am going to save it with the same name, my demo key pair, but with the PPK file format. So now this is converted to PPK file. I'll click on OK. Now I can safely close this Putty generator. Okay. So this is how I have created a key pair and I have converted PEM file to PPK file using a Puttygen. Okay. Now we will create an EC2 instance and then see how key pairs and security groups come into picture, and then we'll see how to use Putty to log into a EC2 instance, right? So we'll see it in the next lecture. Till then, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next session.